This is Buffalo State Data Talk, the podcast where we introduce you to how data is used and explore careers that involve data.
Hello, and welcome to the Buffalo State Data Talk Summer 2021 mini-series all about internships. I'm your host, Heather Campbell, and our summer episodes will explore the process of finding and making the most of your internship. We'll be focusing on the field of data science and analytics, but many of these tips will be applicable to numerous fields, and also if you're searching for a job. From networking to acing that interview, our experienced panel of guests will provide excellent tips and tricks to land you your next internship. Today's episode will be talking about the application process for getting an internship, from writing your cover letter and resume to acing that interview. Let's introduce you to our speakers. Today, we'll be talking to Claire Petrie, a talent acquisition and HR expert from Buffalo. Thanks for joining us today, Claire.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
Dr. Ramona Santamaria, the internship coordinator for the Computer Information Systems Department at Buffalo State College. Thanks for joining us today, Ramona.
Thanks for having me, Heather. I love talking about CS and data.
Ijaz Eberhardt, a journalist and a Buffalo State College data science and analytics alumni. Thanks for joining us today, Ijaz.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be welcoming back to the show today Bill Bauer, the Education and Diversity Director at the BioXFL NSF Science and Technology Center at Hopman Woodworth Institute. Thanks for joining us today, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
Denise Harris, the Director of the Career Development Center at Buffalo State College. Thanks for joining us today, Denise.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So if you found an internship you're interested in applying to, can you maybe give us some suggestions of common application mistakes and resume mistakes that you see and how to avoid these?
Sure. So I think by far the most common mistake is just not finishing the application. We have a lot of applicants that will fill out most of it, but then won't send their transcripts or are missing one part of it. And they're otherwise a very good applicant, but we can't accept them because they didn't follow through with all the steps. So make sure you do that. That's the very first thing to do. Sometimes, though, it's also not their fault if they ask someone to write a recommendation letter and they don't actually do it. So it's really important to make sure that you follow up not just with the recommendation writer, but also with the program that you applied to, and make sure that they have all the parts that they need before the deadline.
Yeah, something that's really simple, making sure that everything's there, but extremely important. What are some common application and resume mistakes?
The biggest one is using the templates in Microsoft. Those are not real. That's not what companies are looking for. It's a good place to start if you want to organize yourself, but what you really want to do is find a simple resume template, put in all your information in it, and then take your resume and go to the Career Development Center.
So speaking of a resume, do you have any advice for making a good resume or any bad things to avoid?
My advice for making a great resume is communicate your impact and results. So a lot of students' resumes I see list tasks. So, if you're a cashier, you're closing the drawer or you're providing, good customer service or taking orders. So say you work at Panera, for example, you train 10 new employees. That's amazing. So definitely say you train 10 new employees, but try something like you trained 10 new employees, which led to no customer service interruption during peak time, or something like that shows you see the connection of your work to the bigger picture and how you're contributing to the goals of the company.
So when you're describing your position, say kind of what you did and then the result.
Yeah, so on my resume, I literally have my task and then I put a comma and say which led to XYZ, whatever type of impact or result that was.
Absolutely. So for your resume, you definitely want it to be, I usually use like the 4 C's. Like you want it to be clear, super easy to read, understand, no crazy fonts, make it super simple. Correct. So you want to make sure you're giving yourself credit for everything that you've done. All the information is accurate. You don't want to even round up a GPA. If you have a 3.8 GPA, you have a 3.8 GPA. You don't want to round up to a 3.9, or you want to be as honest as possible in that. You want it to be very concise. So this is not a 5-page resume. A lot of times people ask me, like, is a 2-page resume okay? Yeah, I mean, if you're a grad student or you have tons of experience, or maybe you are a returning worker into a different field, you may have a 2-page resume. But you want to make sure everything on your resume is directly related or relevant to the position you're applying for. And then last, you want it to be concrete. You want to be able to quantify your experiences as much as possible. So you want to put a number to something. Even if I don't understand what you've done, if you can say, I was at the 30%, or I improved this by 15%, or, I was responsible for managing over $2,000 while I was working at, Ann Taylor Loft, or whatever it is. Those experiences mean something to employers rather than just regurgitate your responsibilities. And again, try to stay away so much from the soft skills. I'll see a lot of provided exceptional customer service. Can you quantify that for me? How do you prove that to me? Where that's something you can talk about on your cover letter, but on your resume, tell me, did you have a return customer base? Were you able to identify those key structures and those key points?
We've all heard that you're supposed to tailor your resume to the position. What does that actually mean? We're supposed to do it, but how?
So when you are applying for a position, you want to do your homework. You want to make sure that you know everything there is to know about the company. You want to make sure that you're also looking to see what language they use. So let's say you're going to apply for maybe an analytics position at Roswell Park. Roswell Park is really clear on providing exceptional care, putting clients first. And so what I would actually ask students to do is mirror the language back to the employer. So if they're using holistic care, you say holistic care. If they say exceptional service, then you say exceptional service. So that's what I'm talking about when it's like, make it super intentional or super targeted or tailored to that position. You want to use the words, you want to make sure that you know what their mission and vision statement is, and then say it back to them. Like, don't just say, I looked at your mission. Say, you value exceptional customer care, as do I, and this is how I do that. If they're looking for 10 specific qualities and characteristics, make sure in some capacity those characteristics or qualities or skills are included in your resume and list them appropriately. If the number one thing they're looking for is a certain computer program or a certain skill set that you have, list that first, because that's what's going to be important to them. Not what you think is important, but what they think is important. So list it even in the order that they put it in, because again, they may be looking through these really quickly, or a computer probably will be looking through it and they're going to type in certain words. And if you don't have those exact words that's on the job description, that you're going to be kicked out of the system. Also making sure that when you're reading your cover letter and your resume, if you've done anything that's super specific to the organization that you're applying for, make sure that you change it for the next position you're applying for. I can't tell you how many times I read someone's cover letter that really wants to work up upstate, and then in the last paragraph they're like, and thank you so much, Niagara University. Oh, that resume and cover letter unfortunately didn't make it to the yes pile. Because again, you have to do your due diligence.
So that seems like definitely one of the maybe more common resume mistakes you might see, but could you tell us maybe some of the other ones so that we can make sure we're avoiding them?
Absolutely. People that put their headshots on their cover letters. Again, we don't want to necessarily display what we look like. It's all about our abilities. You want to use a regular Microsoft Word document. You do not want to use a template. A lot of companies that you're going to be applying for are going to, again, going back to ATSs or applicant tracking software, where a computer's going to read it before a human being does. And because of the comprehensive ATS that you may have, it may be able to scan anything, but some of them are actually homegrown systems. Also, you want to spell out information like your bachelor's degree or an associate's degree or your master's degree. A lot of times on resumes, I'll see M.S. or BS. And again, a computer might not read that. And so these are just some small mistakes that kick people out of the applicant pool, and they know that they're qualified. And that's so extremely frustrating. So keep your resume targeted, keep it specific, adapt it to each and every position you apply for. Make sure you're spelling out common acronyms or spelling out your degree. And again, adapt it to each and every position you apply for.
Perfect. Everyone should be able to go home and write an amazing resume now.
Absolutely. I love it.
So a lot of the time, students specifically don't have a lot of experience. If you haven't had a job that's specifically related to whatever position you're applying for or the internship, what should you include on your resume?
That's a great question. And I think we think about, we just go to school or we come home, but think about all the wonderful things that Buffalo State has to offer. Think about the service learning projects that were embedded in the school. So you had to do them. But that's community engagement. That's you stepping out and putting into practice what you've learned. So highlighting those type of experiences on your resume. Also awards and honors. Go ahead and put those on there. Language skills. So all of those skills would definitely be something that I would encourage to list on a resume. And to be honest, you may not have had a lot of time to be involved in clubs or organizations or study abroad or whatever, but now's a really great time to look at your resume and say, okay, so where are those holes? Where are those gaps? And then take on projects or internships or volunteer work that can kind of supplement some of that space.
So potentially you could list projects, not just jobs.
Exactly. Projects, accomplishments, things that you've done actually in class. Those are all great opportunities, especially because it's directly related to what you're applying for.
Most or even all jobs and internships ask you to submit, of course, a resume and then also a cover letter. So can you kind of explain the purpose of a cover letter and how can you make one that's not just restating your resume? Because when you're starting off, it kind of seems like when you're writing a cover letter, you're like, okay, I'm supposed to talk about my skills. Isn't that what's in my resume?
Yes, this is one of my favorite questions too, because I will be very honest with you. When we work with employers, we hear that some of the employers love cover letters and some of them do not read cover letters. And again, to be very honest, who are you going to get though? I don't know. So you want to make sure that you're always submitting a really strong cover letter with your resume. Well, what does that mean? So basically the difference between a resume and a cover letter and what you include and not include is this. A resume is a snapshot of your skills, responsibilities, and most likely accomplishments. Like, what can you do? It is your proven track record of success, where your cover letter is basically how you're going to take those skills and apply them to be successful moving forward. So I kind of want you to look at it that way. Like, one's your past and one's kind of your future. So the cover letter I love because that I can showcase your writing skills. You can showcase what you know about the company. So let's say you're applying to, again, going back to M&T Bank, you can know their mission, their vision, who their main competitors are, what projects that they want you to work on, what computer systems they want you can work on, and you can talk to those strengths and those skills in that cover letter. But you don't just want to say, as my resume says, or as per my resume. You want to maybe highlight some of those soft skills or some of those non-tangible items that are on the application. So let's say they want you to talk about your time management skills or the fact that they need someone that's very organized. You can say in your cover letter, I have a 3.8 in my major GPA. I'm involved in the data analytics club, and I'm also a student athlete. Throughout these experiences, I've learned how to manage my time effectively, work on projects, and prioritize. And I'm really excited to bring these skills to M&T's internship. That's a great way to kind of highlight how you can apply your skills to what they're looking for. The biggest mistake students make is they say, wow, I really want this internship because I'm going to learn a lot. Well, that's great, but what can you bring to them? What's unique about you? And cover letters allow you the opportunity for you to provide that narrative. So I want you to think of them as two standalone documents. One's your past and one you can bring to the future of that organization.
So let's imagine you have written this stellar resume and you turned it in and you got an interview. So do you have any suggestions of how to prepare for that interview?
Yeah, so my first thing I would say is study that job description. So certainly read the company website as well. You might get asked just those generic questions about, what resonated with you about our values or what do you know about us? So you don't want to be stuck not having looked at that. But I would then definitely study the job description. So for example, if it states usually under the qualifications or knowledge, skills, and abilities section, specific keywords will be there. Things like teamwork or detail orientation, accountability, things like that. So expect that you're going to get asked about those key skills that they're looking for and be ready to discuss examples of each. So as a recruiter, when I'm interviewing someone and I ask, what are your core, strengths and personality traits that you're going to bring to the table? And they'll tell me, oh yeah, multitasking, detail orientation. And then I'm like, great, let's get into that. Tell me about a time where you demonstrated those skills or used those skills. And there can be a little bit of silence there. So I think just being prepared with those examples of the skills that you possess that they're looking for.
What is proper interview etiquette? Like when you first show up, walk in the door, what should you do?
This is such a fun question. And normally my answer would be so different, right? Because I would say to you, as soon as you step out of your car, the interview starts. Well, nowadays, more than likely, your interview is going to be virtual. A couple different things we want to take into account here. The first thing is, again, you want to do your homework. If you've gotten the opportunity to get an interview, it's really closer than you think. So this is such an exciting opportunity for you. So do your homework. Even go further into the company's organization and website. Make sure that you know everything that you can. And also be thinking about who you are and what you can bring to that organization. I can't tell you how often and how difficult it is for students to talk about their strengths. I want you to highlight 6 of your strengths and then back it up with 6 experiences that you can tell to an employer and how you know that those are your strengths. So stories, examples, experiences that you can highlight. You want to make sure that you have, if you are Skyping or Zooming for your interview, you want to make sure that you have an interesting background, right? You don't want to make sure that there's a big light behind you or your cat flies over you. You want to make sure that you are able to really be in a private, quiet environment. You may want to make sure that you're actually looking at the cameras. But again, you want to be calm, cool, collected. It's a great conversation for you to have. If you are in person, again, do a dry run, but do a dry run at the time of your interview. 7 a.m. in Buffalo is very different than 3 p.m. at Buffalo. So make sure that you know how to get there, where to park. Do you need a credit card or quarters to be able to park in a parking garage or on the street? You want to make sure that you say hello to the admin assistant or the person that has been coordinating with you regarding your interview. You don't want to bring your cell phone in. You want to ask questions. My favorite thing when students ask me this question is they're like, what if I'm offered water or coffee? Should I say no? I'm like, well, not if you want it. Like, you're going to be talking more than you ever probably have in a long time. And you're going to get dry. So a glass of water is always, I always ask for or appreciate when someone offers me a glass of water. But kindness, thoroughness, and again, making sure that you're dressed to impress are all great tips and techniques as you approach the interview process.
How early should you arrive? You don't want to be sitting there for forever waiting because you're not supposed to go on your phone. So, while you're waiting. So how early should you get there?
So 15 for in-person and about 5 for a Zoom.
What should you have prepared? Should you bring your resume? Should you print off and bring your cover letter? I mean, I'm assuming you would think they would have it, but what are the rules?
Definitely. So you would assume, yes, probably they do have it. They probably have it on file somewhere, but things happen, right? So sometimes, someone gets pulled in at the last minute because the person that was supposed to interview you got sick and they don't have your applicant material. So I always encourage students to bring a couple fresh copies printed nicely on resume paper of your resume. Again, 2 or 3, you don't need to go crazy. Also, I encourage students to bring the list of references that they have. That includes their name, contact information, phone numbers. Believe it or not, sometimes employers still want you to fill out an old school application, and to not have that information ready to go is frustrating and kind of embarrassing. So go ahead and bring that with you, have all of that information with you as well.
Can you tell us maybe what some of the most common interview mistakes are and how you can avoid them?
Absolutely. I would say the biggest mistake that students make is they do not rehearse or do not practice before they go into an interview. That's the time where they're like, I'm just going to wing it. And it breaks my heart when people say that to me because you've worked so hard up to this point that really if you get an interview, they're at this point really interested. So it's your job almost to lose at this point. You're usually one of 3 candidates. And so it's a really great, the odds are in your favor, right? And so practice, practice, practice. Thinking about your strengths. There's 2 components to really doing well in an interview. 1, how well you know the organization. And 2, how well you know yourself. And that includes strengths, weaknesses, areas of growth, and what you can bring to the organization. But my number 1 tip is make sure you go into the interview being able to answer the question, tell me about yourself. That will always be the first question or some type of combination of that with, and what do you know about our organization or why do you want to work here? But you have to know the answer to tell me about yourself. And this is where students tend to unfortunately set a very negative tone for their interview, but you can really set a very positive tone if you follow a quick tip. I want you to think of this question like a triangle. And there's 3 things that you want an employer to know about you. So let's say it's the fact that you have the exact skill set that they're looking for. You want them to know that you're, able to relocate or travel because that's a part of the company or the position. And let's say that you're really excited about the mission and vision of the organization. So as you're answering the question, those are the 3 things that you're going to highlight. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and interview today. I'm really excited to talk to you about my strengths and my skill set so excited about the opportunity to travel for this position. I'm very flexible. I'm very culturally competent, and I know that skill set would mirror my skill set. And I'm really excited about being able to have the opportunity to interview for an organization that mirrors my passion because I'm also very committed to community engagement or whatever the mission is. By saying something like that when you first come into an interview really does set the tone like, wow, this person's serious and they really know what they want versus...
I was impressed.
But it's so different than like, my name is Denise, I'm an Buff State grad and I love, I did my master's here or my bachelor's here or, I am from Buffalo and you're just like, okay, and then you have to get into the meat of the interview. So it's really important for you to really kind of go in there knowing what's your triangle. What do you want them to know about you? Because if you don't know, they're not going to know.
Sometimes jobs in data science or computer science have technical interviews in addition to your typical interview format. So could you explain kind of what exactly is a technical interview and how do you prepare for that compared to preparing for a regular interview?
Excellent. Yes. So basically, if they're asking you for a technical interview, They want you to showcase the fact that you actually know the skills that they're asking you to do. So they may give you a sample project, right? So you have 20 minutes to do this assignment. And literally it's going to be nerve-wracking, but they're going to put you in a room, they're going to shut the door, and they're going to allow you to work on the project. Or they're going to ask you to bring a project forward that you did, and they're going to want you to walk them through exactly what you did, using the technical language, using your professional framework, and be ready to articulate why you made the choices you did and how you were able to, again, take these projects and apply them to the organization moving forward.
So at the end of the interview, people typically ask, do you have any questions? And of course, we know we're supposed to say yes, and we're supposed to have questions. So what are we supposed to ask?
Well, you never want to ask something that you should already know. So don't say something like, so can you tell me what you guys do? Tell me what the company does? Nope. Tell me what the mission is? No, we should already have all of that information. You also don't want to ask anything that's self-serving. So how many days off do we get? Or what's the compensation package like? Again, that's not the time or the place. So my favorite question to ask is about the culture of the organization. Can you tell me a little bit about the culture of the organization? Why do you like working here? How long have you been here? What was your path to get here? Tell me about a project you're currently working on. Tell me some of the things that make new hires successful, because these are all interview information that you can then kind of take in your mind. And again, when you're writing your thank you letter, you can reiterate, I have these skills, or I'm excited to be a member of this culture of this organization. And again, it really does give you a sense to know what type of organization you're going into. And believe it or not, that'll tell you a lot about the company culture.
So you mentioned writing a thank you card. Is that something you absolutely have to do? Should you write an email? Do you have to write a physical card? What should you be doing?
I always think a handwritten note card is nice, but unfortunately with everything moving as fast as the world is moving, there's going to be a delay there, right? So I absolutely think it's important to at least send a thank you email. And you really want to thank individuals on the search committee. That's the people that have been talking with you, probably the people that you start the day with or maybe end the day with. Those are the individuals that will really get together and make that hiring decision. You also want to send a note card to potential bosses or anyone that's pretty much interviewed you throughout the day or throughout that time frame. And finally, I always like to thank the individual that was coordinating my travel or coordinating with me, because that is usually a gatekeeper of the office, the admin assistant, and they really do have a lot of say in who comes into that environment. So always treat that individual with respect and dignity, and I always like to say thank you because they're the ones that are coordinating a lot of the work for you.
I think it's a great thought to make sure that you're not leaving anyone off your list, because any person that you meet during this experience could end up having a say in whether or not you get hired.
100%. And they will compare notes. So don't write the same note to everybody else. Like they will literally say, I got a note. Did you get a note? And then it's funny. Then they'll say, oh, well, the last candidate didn't write one, but this candidate did. And it really is something that does set you apart, because a lot of people don't do that. They don't think it's important. They don't think it's necessary. And trust me, it's those little things that make a difference.
So finally, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know that we didn't get a chance to cover today?
Every little thing that you do, put it on a resume or write it down and write the things that you learned it down and put it in a shoebox so that when you're ready to do that resume, you've got everything together in one place and you don't really have to think about it too much. That
is excellent advice, because if you haven't been keeping track of everything and you now need to write a resume, it's going to take you a long time.
It takes too much time. Your resume should be an active document on your desktop, and keep putting things in it. Don't stop, because once you stop developing yourself, the opportunities for you end.
So finally, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know that we didn't get a chance to cover today?
Don't be so hard on yourself, because again, there's been so many jobs that I didn't apply for, or so many internships that I didn't go for, or positions I didn't, because I just self-doubted. And I wish I could go back to myself and say, you're going to be fine. You got this. Just try. And I wish someone would have said it's okay to not get it. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. Because I think so often we're so hard on ourselves that it's sometimes okay just to know, like, you can try as long as you learn from it and grow. And don't make the same mistake twice. Don't hesitate to come to the Career Development Center. We're on the 3rd floor of Cleveland Hall. You can contact us by just emailing askcdc@buffalostate.edu. But know that the team is here to help and support, and we're here in any way that we can to kind of really ensure that, again, this is a hard process. If applying for internships and jobs were easy, I wouldn't have a job. So I just want to validate that this is tough. We get it, and we're here to make it hopefully not as tough.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode from our mini-series, all about internships. If you liked the episode, make sure you check out our previous podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you prefer to watch, podcast videos are now available on the Buffalo State DSA YouTube channel. For more information about starting your career as a data scientist, go to dataanalytics.buffalostate.edu. And don't forget to subscribe so that you get notified each time we release a new episode of Buffalo State Data Talk.